From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lead. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on June 12th, 2025, live from Good Girl Brewing in Aiken, South Carolina. How we doing, Aiken? Yes, this is our second live taping of the year, and it's great to be back on the road. You will remember that our first live taping of the year was with House Speaker Merle Smith in our Columbia studio previewing the legislative session. And now we are bookending the session with Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey, and Maayan Schechter is joining me to question him as well. I know he's excited and wondering exactly what he signed up for, but we appreciate you making time. And of course, this wonderful crowd here at Good Girl Brewing. So Senator Massey, thank you for joining us. Kick us off by telling us what it entails being the Senate Majority Leader. Do you have to keep everyone in line? How do you start the daily order of business? Do you set the agenda? Give us an overview of what it means to be Majority Leader in the Senate, if you can even describe it.
No,
the good and the bad.
The good and the bad. All right. Well, hey everybody. First off, and thanks to the ETV crew for coming down. Thanks for Good Girl hosting. It's a great venue. Gavin, welcome down to Aiken. Yes. Maayan, welcome back.
I'm only ever here for polo. You can say that here and not be pretentious, right?
I don't know, man. I'm from Edgefield. We don't do a whole lot of polo in Edgefield, man. But no, it's a great venue though, and I'm glad y'all could come down. So, Senate Majority Leader. Anybody ever been to a circus? It's kind of like being the ringleader of the circus. Now, it really is kind of what you make of it, but for me, it has become more of kind of like the chief cat herder. Mm-hmm. But I do a lot. I mean, from a serious note, there's a lot of strategy involved, just kind of running the floor, make sure people are where they're supposed to be, make sure things are moving the way they're going, make sure we get our priorities moving in the right direction. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, just a lot of logistical stuff as part of it. But one of the bigger parts of the job for me has been trying to have a good, honest, trustworthy relationship with each member of really the whole Senate, but especially my caucus. But I really try to have a good relationship with every member of the Senate.
And you had a lot of new people this year too, so that's even.
We had a lot. We had 13. So for those who aren't familiar with the numbers, there are 46 senators. We had 13 new ones after the elections last November, which is, from what anybody could remember, and from all the historians, that may be the largest class that has come in that anybody could remember. So, and you could see that change in the personality too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's January through May, and you're scheduling those weeks out. I mean, that tort reform debate was 4 weeks long, on and off essentially, and you're trying to get all these bills through, different priorities scheduled.
Seemed like 4 months.
Yeah. Speaking of tort reform,
Yeah,
Maayan.
speaking of tort reform, that was one of the biggest bills, the tort reform liquor liability bill. I know folks in the House were calling it the Liquor Liability Plus bill. Now that it's finished, how do you feel about it? And do you think that we've heard a lot of bars and restaurants talking about they have needed something like this to lower the insurance rates. Do you think it's going to help bar and restaurant owners? What do you think about the impact of it?
Well, so first off, for a lot of folks who may not be familiar with the issue, I'll tell you, this has become a really difficult issue for places like Good Girl. I mean, you have places that are event venues that serve alcohol, or you have bars, you have some restaurants, especially the restaurants that are they get more of their revenue from alcohol than serving food. Those places have had a really difficult time finding liquor liability insurance. And then if they can find it being affordable, something that they can access. So what we've seen over the last couple of years is a lot of places like this have closed. They've gone out of business all around the state because they just couldn't afford the insurance premiums. I mean, they've gone from, they'd be paying $8,000 a year to $80,000 a year is what the price is. I mean, you're seeing those kinds of increases. And now we've only got 2 or 3 carriers that are writing the policies because of the claims that have been made. So it's been a real problem. Now, what I've said is that problem is bigger than just alcohol. That really, it affects everybody, because the problem really goes to all liability insurance rates across the board, not just liquor liability, but everything from car insurance liability to medical malpractice liability to home builders, the contractors' liability policies that they have to buy. If you compare South Carolina's liability insurance rates to those states around us, you'll see that we're higher on almost everywhere across the board. So that was kind of where we started off. That's where I hoped we were going to go.
Love that sound. That's not an AT sound effect, everyone who's listening at home.
It's one of the wonders of being outside,
Yes,
right? This is great.
majesty.
It's a good venue. And for those who aren't here, we're right beside the massive athletic complex in downtown Aiken. So there's a lot of activity all around us. It's great. But we go through the process, right? You go through the process and through that legislative process on both sides, in the House and in the Senate, and I knew it was going to get watered down before we finished it, and it did, and it got watered down pretty significantly. Will it have an impact? Yeah, look, I think it's better than where we were 3 months ago, marginally so. Will it help places like Good Girl? I'm less optimistic about that. I think that any help that's coming there is probably not going to be realized for another 6, 9, 12 months. And so there are going to be a lot of places that aren't going to be able to hang on for 6, 9, 12 months.
What does the legislature need to do then next year, in the last year of a 2-year session, to help lessen the blow to some of these places?
Well, there are a number of things, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds on it, because this, you can really get into some legal jargon here that'll kind of make your eyes glaze over. But let's just say that our civil justice system is really out of line with what we see in other southeastern states. Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia again have all made significant changes to their civil justice system, and it has resulted in lower liability insurance rates in many of those places. In fact, Governor DeSantis in Florida announced earlier this year that their car insurance rates were going down for the first time in decades. And he attributed that to some changes that they made just a few years ago. And I think you see that in places if you'll actually implement those changes. So I think we've got to be much more aggressive in dealing with the civil justice system to ensure that people who are injured still have the opportunity to recover, but also not punish businesses and individuals who are having to pay those costs. Because right now we are way too moved over to the one side, and I think we're seeing that. And liquor liability is the biggest example of it.
And are you all going to revisit any part of tort reform next year too? Is on the calendar at all?
I think there is a plan to do more next year than what we did this year. Ultimately, the House wasn't comfortable going forward with everything that the Senate had done. So there are some parts of medical malpractice liability, dealing with home builders, dealing with a few other things, dealing with car insurance that we just weren't able to get to. And the Speaker and I have talked about that a few times, and he said they want to try to get those things next year. They're going to take those up. And then I think, Gavin, we're going to have to see how some of this stuff plays out, because I fully expect that we're going to be back dealing with especially the liquor liability issue in just a few years, because I don't think we addressed it.
Sure. Pivoting to workforce development, I know that was a big issue last year, big push to get more folks trained up. When it comes to that, do you feel like that's still an issue when it comes to getting all the skilled workers we need in the state? When we talk about economic development coming to our state, these big industries, these skilled advanced manufacturers, and if so, what more needs to be done to create that education, that pipeline for workforce development?
Well, I think workforce development is something we've got to do every year, and we've got to keep on that issue, and that is primarily because we have done, and not me, there are a lot of other people who've been in this business. One of them sitting right there, Will Williams here in Aiken, who does a tremendous job for economic development down here. But the economic development folks have done such a tremendous job of recruiting business and industry. And there are all sorts of opportunities for South Carolina's children now as they grow up. So many opportunities where they can have good, strong careers where they're making a lot of money and getting great benefits right here in South Carolina. And so that's great, but you have to have the people who can fill those jobs, because what I really don't want to do is spend South Carolinians' taxpayer dollars to help recruit those folks in, and then those places have to recruit employees from out of state because they didn't have the workforce here to do the job. Right? I really don't want to do that. So workforce development is essential, especially if we're going to keep recruiting business and industry, and I hope we will, because those folks. I bet there's a lot of stuff that we do in South Carolina that people here don't know about. The folks in Aiken know about tires because we've got Bridgestone right down the street. We do a lot of good stuff. a lot of people here have probably heard about Boeing, and today you saw the first 787 tragedy in the world, and that's terrible. I mean, it's a terrible video if you haven't seen that out of India. But we make the largest passenger jets in the world in North Charleston. We also make more tires than any state in the country. We make fighter jets in Greenville County. Did y'all know that? We make fighter jets. Lockheed Martin out of Greenville County has the contract for F-16s, and I just think that's freaking cool. But we make all sorts of things here. We make cars. We do boats. We do water heaters. I mean, we do all sorts of manufacturing here. And then, of course, here in Aiken, you got lots of other different talents and skill sets with the Savannah River site. This has become a big nuclear hub in the Aiken area. We have a lot of talent here for that. And then, of course, because over at Fort Gordon, the U.S. Army is putting their National Cyber Command, Aiken and North Augusta area is becoming a hub for cybersecurity. So we're seeing all sorts of different employment opportunities now and into the future. And so you got to have the folks to do that. You've got to create that pipeline. I think one of the things we've got to do at the K-12 level, frankly, this is what I think one of our biggest deficiencies in K-12 is in the guidance department. I think we've got to make sure that our children are exposed to the opportunities that are available. The kids think that they can do almost anything. But when their scope is limited to what their parents do or what their friends' parents do, those types, then they're really limited in what they're going to seek to pursue. But if we tell them all these things that we were just talking about and many other things that happen in South Carolina, I think if we expose the children to those opportunities and you tell them what they can earn, what kind of life they can lead, and then what they have to get, what kind of education, skills, training they need to compete for those positions, then I think we can get there. So I think we need to improve in that area. Our technical colleges do a great job of providing opportunities. I wish the only criticism I really got of our technical colleges, I wish they would stay in that lane. I feel like sometimes they want to be mini universities, and I would prefer that they just do the job training, which is what the technical colleges were created for.
And the WINS program too, the certifications.
WINS, our SC Ready, our apprenticeship programs. I mean, we really do have some programs in South Carolina, job training programs that are the envy of the rest of the country. You see a lot of places coming in and looking at our apprenticeship programs, and they want to mirror those things. We've got a lot of things built in place. We've got to expose the children to what's available, make sure they have those opportunities to get that training, and then keep moving.
And energy to do it.
Yeah, you mentioned energy, so this is perfect. The Energy Security Act was signed into law this year. We've seen already in the last, week or so, Duke Energy has announced it was filing for a 1,400 megawatt hydrogen-capable combined cycle plant in Anderson County.
What's that mean, Mayon?
I read the question.
We'll swing back. We'll circle back to
Natural
this.
gas and hydrogen.
We'll circle back to this. This is about you tonight.
He knows her parents are here.
This is about you tonight.
That's like when Ken Burns asked me a question. You don't know fear until you have had that happen to you.
We're going to talk about this. What else is on the horizon? We've heard a lot about Kennedy's and VC Summer, of course. So what do we think is next?
Yeah, well, I saw the report about Duke as well. And, so we have three major power suppliers, Duke, Dominion, and Santee Cooper and the co-ops. Duke actually has more customers than others. And so it's not surprising that Duke is leading the effort there to do more power. Of course, Dominion and Santee Cooper and the co-ops were wanting to partner with the Kennedy's gas plant, which is what we spent a lot of time debating over the last couple of years, really. We've had a tremendous amount of growth in the state. We see that residentially, but we also see that industrially with businesses. Industry is, especially the larger industry that we've been recruiting in recent years, require a lot of energy. And of course, we've had a lot of data center growth, which is also requiring a lot of energy. And we're in a position where we're running out and we're going to have to generate more. And so that's what we're seeing. And we had a lot of debate about that, about whether we should do it. Oh, that really wasn't the debate. It was more about how we should do it and who should pay for it. Look, those are one of the problems that come with growth. You need more energy to supply that growth. All of us want the lights to come on. All of us, want to be able to take advantage of those things that we take for granted too often. So I think you're also going to see announcements about Kennedy's probably coming as well. So you're going to see some more power plants being constructed. I'm hopeful, Because as y'all know, we also sent out requests for proposals on finishing VC Summer. I hope that we'll be able to get there as well. Now, I don't want Dominion and Santee Cooper co-op customers having to pay for it, since I'm already paying for the abandonment of those facilities. But if private industry, Google, Amazon, some of those other places, are willing to put up their own money in order to finish those projects, which would then take some pressure off the other plants, such that we don't have to pay for some of those things. I think that's a great thing as long as we get that worked out. But this is a problem of a growing state, and I'm glad we've had some leadership to address those things.
I'm going to pivot to the federal level, talk about Washington. But there's been a lot of discussion about funding cuts. There have been funding cuts. There have been layoffs. I talked to the head of MUSC, Dr. David Cole, recently about concerns over NIH grant funding. I talked to Sarah Goldsby at Deotis about how they had money frozen for addiction treatment services. Just talked to Kim Stenson over at EMD, talking about the future of FEMA and how that could be affected. And then, of course, there's cuts proposed for Medicaid and SNAP benefits. And people concerned about what could happen in Savannah River site, though I feel like since it's defense and energy, and Lindsey Graham got $2 billion plus for it last year, things might be okay. But that's not always the case. So what do you say to all those who are concerned about current and proposed and possibly future funding cuts? And if there were major drops to these state agencies, does the General Assembly have the ability to fill in the differences, fill in those funding gaps?
Well, I think that first off, I think it's great to pay attention, and maybe you should be concerned, maybe you shouldn't. I mean, so far what we've seen is a lot of talk and not a whole lot of action, frankly. And so I think we need to see how those things are going to play out before we start talking about whether the state should respond and what that response should be. There are some things that I think a lot of South Carolinians believe that we probably never should have been funding in the first place. And then there are going to be some things that we may need to deal with. But I think we need to see how it plays out at the level in Washington. And then, as y'all know, when we passed the budget this year, we set a lot of money aside. I mean, we're saving more money now than we've ever done before. We learned a big lesson in 2008 after the recession, when we blew through all of our reserves in a matter of about 3 or 4 months. We made sure that we started saving more money, and I think that's a good fiscal principle. We saved even more money this year, so we'll see how things play out in Washington. If there are things that we do need to jump in on, then we have that ability. But then we'll have a debate about that, about whether the state ought to be doing those things as well. So I think we just really. I understand the anxiety, but I think we need to see how things play out before we jump in and start making commitments.
Speaking of money, the House has left y'all a gift for next year, dealing with income tax cut, perhaps. And part of their plan is, while flattening it, is also a phasing out completely of it, going down to zero. Now, obviously, we don't know what timeline that is on, but if we have enough revenue, then at some point it'll continue to go down. Where do you see that debate going? I know your colleague in the Senate, Senator Sean Bennett, has been pretty adamant that if we're going to talk about income tax reform, we need to be talking about other tax-related reforms as well at the same time. Where do you see that issue going?
Yeah, Senator Bennett has been talking about tax reform issues for several years, and he makes a very compelling and articulate case that what we've been dealing with in income tax reform, it's like the bright, shiny lure that the fish is always attracted to, and everybody's always attracted to that one. But there are other issues out there that we really need to address. And the other two big issues being property taxes and sales taxes. What most people don't realize is that our sales taxes are among the highest in the country, even with the income tax rates that we have. And I'll tell you from the public, what I hear most about when it comes to taxes is property taxes. So I think those are things that we're going to have to look at from a comprehensive basis. Income taxes are easy, and they're easier compared to other stuff. But we really do need to look at the whole tax picture. And because we're still on a system, a very agrarian tax-based policy, and it's a system that was created over a number of years, and then for the last several decades, the legislature's just put in some band-aids here and there. We really need to take advantage of the opportunity that we've been given because of the growth, and look at this thing holistically. I'm all for reducing income taxes. Our income taxes, I mean, our top marginal rate was the highest in the Southeast. We've collapsed some, as you mentioned, but we're taking our top marginal rate from 7% to 6%, which is great, but 6% is still the highest in the Southeast. So I think if you were going to expend that kind of political capital, you should have done something that was going to matter even more. But I think if we're really going to do service on this, we need to spend more time. We need to be willing to tackle the harder problem, which is dealing with property taxes and sales taxes as well.
So it sounds like you're not completely sold on the idea of just taking what the House gave y'all. And I mean, obviously, Senator Harvey Peeler has been very clear no one will out-tax him.
Out-tax cut him.
Out-tax cut him. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Important.
He's said many times nobody's going to out-tax cut Harvey Peeler. And he's proven that to some degree. Look, I think the Senate is never going to take what the House passes and just pass it along. Whether it's tax policy or anything else, that's just not what we do, y'all.
That's the majority leader talking right there.
That's just not what we do.
Preview of what his job is.
And so I think this issue was always going to get more scrutiny and more debate on the Senate side. It is something it's probably going to take us a while. I do think that we'll have the debate on it. I think there'll be committee work on it. I think Senator Peeler is committed to having the conversation on additional income tax reductions. And there are some of us, like Senator Bennett, and I'd put myself in this camp, who want to expand that conversation just beyond income taxes.
So wrapping up here on session, what do you want to see happen next year? What's on the agenda? If you can preview a little bit of it. That's the last year of the 2-year session. It starts in January. Yeah,
we usually get together in November, December, and start coming up with priorities for the next year. So we haven't had a whole lot of those conversations yet. In fact, most of us have tried to stay away from legislative issues as much as possible in the last month, just because.
Thank you for making time to come out today.
Yeah. No, this is great. No, this is a whole lot more fun than talking to senators, right? So I'd much rather be here with y'all than dealing with that. But I do think you're going to see some continued effort on some of the liability reforms. My hope is that the Senate will begin with changes to our DUI laws. Our DUI laws are extremely weak. We have way too many people getting hurt and killed. My hope is that we're going to tackle that right out of the gate and try to come down much harder on those offenses. And then we'll see where we go from there. But I think that's going to take us a little while. There'll be a debate about that. That's not going to be easy. We'll be dealing with tax reform. We'll probably be dealing with some more tort-related issues. Something else is going to happen between now and the end of the year that's going to come up.
Definitely always does. So
also happening next year is this thing called the governor's race.
If
I'm
you've
sure
heard
you're familiar.
about it.
Which always has some kind of impact on legislative work. And you've served under a variety of governors. What style are you looking for in the next governor? Obviously one thing that everybody talks about with Governor Henry McMaster is how much he coordinates, cooperates, communicates. I'm probably missing a C there that he does with the legislature. Others have had not so easy go. What do you want in the next governor?
Well, first off, I think you have to recognize that Governor McMaster has taken that approach, and it has been successful. I mean, there have been a lot of things done. Like, I will tell you that over the last 5 or 6 years, the legislature has accomplished more than what we've done in the previous 20. And I think a lot of that has to be given credit to the governor and the approach that he has taken. So I think having somebody who will work with the legislature is important. I think it's also important that you have somebody who is going to push the legislature a little bit. To some extent, Governor Sanford and Governor Haley did that. There are people who say maybe they pushed too hard. Maybe they were more browbeating, and that can turn people away, and it can't have that. But I do think it's important that you have a governor out there who's going to lead and try to rally the public, right? So, for me, though, what I'm really looking at is, we need a governor who's going to be able to identify the issues that South Carolina is struggling with. What are the challenges that we're facing now, and the challenges that are going to be coming about in the next several years? Identify those challenges, speak to those challenges, understand those challenges, and articulate ideas to those things. Because what I see are a number of statewide challenges that really, even in a legislatively dominated state, that really you need the bully pulpit from the governor to address. Those can be education, infrastructure, And infrastructure is roads and bridges, but more than that, water and sewer and other things as well, broadband access. Higher education, I think, is something that we really need to look at. And because in many respects, the middle class is being priced out of higher education. And there are long-term consequences to that. So I think we need to look at that. We need to look at growth in South Carolina and how we can better manage that, because my fear is that we are not managing it very well, that we don't have enough tools in place. We have not empowered the local communities enough to deal with those things, and it will overwhelm you if you let it. And I think in some places around the state, Mount Pleasant is a good example. There are other places, Fort Mill, where the really high growth areas where it is overwhelming. Like, I don't know how you could build anything else in Mount Pleasant. But I think those are some of the issues. But I think what we need as a governor is someone who can identify those issues and then speak to them. And that's what I hope is going to happen, as opposed to focusing on some of the other nonsense that we're hearing about now. Being the governor of South Carolina is an important job, and it really, if you have somebody who can understand the issues, who has ideas, who can articulate the issues and rally the public around those things. If you can rally the public can light a fire into the legislature and you can get some things done. But it's going to take somebody in the governor's office who has that bully pulpit, who, when he goes to or she goes to Myrtle Beach or Greenville or Beaufort, the press is going to come for that. Right? People are going to come out when it's the governor. But if it's the Senate Majority Leader from Edgefield to Aiken,
we got a crowd.
There's some people here who want to come, and thank you guys. It's great. I thank you for being here.
This is a kickoff.
But if you do this with me in Beaufort, we're probably not going to have as many people because people don't know who I am down there. But I think it's important to have. Those are the things that I'm looking for. Right.
Wrapping up on this, of course, there's also statewide constitutional officers on the ballot, too. One of them would be the treasurer. Obviously, a big issue this past session was dealing with his removal. The Senate voted 33-8 to remove Curtis Loftus over that $1.8 billion accounting discrepancy. Boondog was what we call here on the podcast. You were one of the 8 who voted not to remove him. You said there wasn't enough evidence to make you vote that way. But you also said you support someone running against him. So who do you want to see in that position? Do you know anyone that's thinking about it? Do you think there's going to be a challenging primary next June? What are your thoughts?
You said that much better than I said it at the time, Gavin.
I get paid
because,
too.
Because y'all, what I told Gavin at the time, and I told all the rest of the press when they asked me about it, was yes, I thought, look, this was a serious issue, removing a constitutional officer, and I think if you're going to make that charge, you need to prove it, and I just didn't think they proved the case. Having said that, I think Curtis Loftus is a clown, right? I don't think he needs to be the treasurer. Somebody please run for treasurer, right? It's an important position. We need somebody in that position who is competent and trustworthy. I don't think we have that now. My hope is that we will see somebody challenge him if he does go through with running again. I hope we will see somebody challenge him, somebody who is competent with the credentials and who can mount a statewide campaign to do that. I hope, from my perspective, I hope it's a Republican who will do that. But as I said at the time also, I'd vote for a monkey over Curtis Loftus right now. I just don't think he needs to be treasurer. And so I am hopeful that we'll get somebody who is competent and can do the job. But you got the treasurer's office is up. Of course, you're going to have a race for attorney general. You have a race for secretary of state, superintendent of education. We got a lot of them. Did I miss any?
Secretary of State's race, that'll be a big. That's a big one.
That's right. Well, it hasn't gotten much attention because Mark Hammond does a great job.
There you go. Any senators may be interested in the treasurer's race?
Somebody who's interested in money or taxes or leader.
Well, I wish that some of these folks would do something like that. I mean, it's an important job. It's also, I think, the people who, especially if you've been in the legislative side and you've got interests in many different areas, that it's not as appealing to go to a treasurer's position because you're really taking yourself out of the game. I mean, that is more of an administrative, ministerial type position, so you don't have as much of an ability to influence policy. But if that's where you really are, then I think we've got a number of people who would fill in really well. That's not my skill set, but we've got some people who do a great job there.
And just wrapping up, we have a quick lightning round.
Oh boy.
What's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part of the job is leading with so many different personalities and trying to keep everybody on the same page. I mean, y'all will be amazed at elected officials who go through some pretty bitter campaigns at times of just how they wear their emotions on their sleeves a lot, and they can get their feelings hurt real easy. So trying to manage that type of thing is difficult, and then just trying to stay in touch with the public and trying to be in tune with all those things.
Who's your best friend at the State House? Who's your buddy?
Mayan.
This is such a lie.
Mayan, who at every press gaggle I have to correct her on things.
This is not true. This
That's
feels
because she
like
asked
not
the
true.
hardest questions
That's
and
right.
no one else is willing
That's
to.
right. No, I mean, my best friend is Blair, my wife.
Smart
she gives
answer.
me some.
Smart answer.
Well, but, I
Merle
mean,
Smith dodged that one.
No, I mean, you look at that. That's an important part of this job, right? You got to I go home every night, and I jokingly say, but also seriously, I like to have my wife as an alibi, right? Say whatever you want to say about me, but I was with her, and she was going to back me up on that. But it's good to be grounded and to be able to go home and have people that you can talk to and who are going to. No matter how much I fuss about tort reform or whatever, her response to me is, go take out the trash. Right? So it's important to be grounded in that respect.
Any interest in running for higher office?
I don't know. It depends on the day. A month ago, if you'd asked me, I'd have said, I don't even want to be in the Senate anymore. You see what opportunities the good Lord opens and kind of go from there. But I mean, I've been very blessed. I mean, the folks in Aiken, Edgefield, Lexington, McCormick, and Saluda counties have given me an opportunity that few people get. And then the Republican senators have then given me an even more unique opportunity by allowing me to be the leader and then really supporting in all the things that we've tried to do. So I've got nothing to complain about. If this is all God wants me to do, then I've been very blessed with it. But if there are opportunities that open up, I'm not going to tell him no.
And are you going to endorse anyone in the primary? Do you typically endorse in primaries?
If maybe.